Welcome back, everyone, to The Promised Seed, Adam and Eve. Today we're breaking down a significant event in early Christian history, the Council of Chalcedon. This one's a big deal, and trust me, there's a lot to cover. So let's dive in.
As you've heard in the last several episodes, there were several controversies having to do with Christ that are generally grouped together as Christological controversies. Specifically, these controversies were attempts to answer the question of how Christ could be both human and divine at the same time. As you've heard, the question how is one that leads quickly into a realm Scripture itself does not answer. And so, the attempted answers by Apollinarius, Nestorius, and Eutychianism, among others, all tried and failed to answer this question, as their attempted answers were, broadly speaking, abstract speculations rooted in philosophy and formal logic.
And as you probably noticed, one heresy led to the next heresy, as the theologians at issue tried to correct the previous heresy. In other words, in the attempt to respond to one heresy, the response itself resulted in yet another heresy.
Not surprisingly, given the emotions and the politics at play in these theological fights, a church council was called. And this is where early church history gets fun. Remember that in these theological fights, there were two competing schools of thought, the Alexandrine and the Antiochene schools. And so as Apollinarius, Nestorius, and Eutychianism were making their claims, they were defended or attacked by theologians from the opposing school of thought.
And of course, politics were in play as well, as there was certainly no such thing as separation of church and state at that time. In fact, the emperor and other political figures were very involved in these controversies and in their attempted resolutions.
As you heard in the previous episode on Eutychianism, Emperor Theodosius was out riding his horse when it stumbled on a gopher hole. Theodosius fell off the horse and was killed instantly. That put his sister, Empress Pulcheria, on the throne, and she had long supported Pope Leo in his protests of the nefarious goings-on at the council in Ephesus.
And so she convened a new council in 451 in Chalcedon. This Council of Chalcedon is now considered to be the Fourth Ecumenical Council. The council condemned Dioscorus, the bishop of Alexandria, who had run the tables at the council in Ephesus, but forgave everyone else who participated in the council in Ephesus 2 years earlier. That was the easy part for the participants at the council. The hard part came next: how to address and resolve the controversies and heresies that had been raging regarding Christ.
One group of attendees, the Roman delegates, advocated for deciding that Pope Leo's letter, formerly called the Tome of Leo, be deemed to be the decisive, authoritative resolution of the controversies. The other group of attendees, representing the Eastern churches, favored Cyril of Alexandria and the position taken by the council at Ephesus, which had affirmed that the Nicene Creed was sufficient for addressing these controversies. The emperor, however, for a variety of political reasons, strongly desired an additional statement that would address the specific Christological controversies that had been raging for decades.
And so, how was this resolved? The Council of Chalcedon did condemn the extreme forms of both Antioch and Alexandria, in the forms of Apollinarianism and Nestorianism and Eutychianism. As attempted resolutions or correctives to those heretical extremes, the Council used 3 documents, including Pope Leo's letter, the one that had not been admitted to the council at Ephesus.
That more moderate statement especially served as the basis for the Council of Chalcedon's final statement regarding Christ. Note, however, that that statement was not a creed, but it was called a definition of faith. As noted historian Justo Gonzalez recognized, that definition did not actually seek to define the union between Christ's divinity and humanity by explaining how it took place, but instead it set boundaries beyond which heresy lies, and it did that while attempting to reach a compromise between the Antioch and Alexandrian schools of thought.
Be aware, all compromises are the result of both parties losing something. And so, Chalcedon's definition of faith reads like what it is: a compromise intended to establish boundaries beyond which heresy lies, rather than a confession of faith. While it affirms the confession of faith found in Nicaea and then affirmed in Constantinople, it contains an extraordinary amount of language not found in the Scriptures.
To get a brief idea of the type of language contained in the definition of faith, this is a sample. This is one and the same Christ, Son, Lord, only begotten, manifested in two natures, without any confusion, change, division, or separation. The union does not destroy the difference of the two natures, but on the contrary, the properties of each are kept, and both are joined in one person and hypostasis.
Sound like something your congregation might confess on a Sunday morning? Of course not. But there was at least some common language agreed upon to address the theological battles regarding Christ. The shorthand way this is encapsulated is to call this the Chalcedonian Principle. Jesus Christ is one person, two natures, inconfusedly, unchangeably, indivisibly, and inseparably.
And while that language may have helped to calm the waters regarding the specific Christological controversies leading up to the Council of Chalcedon, as you might guess, those four agreed upon adverbs did not put an end to the Christological controversies. Why not? Because those four adverbs are not found in Scripture itself, but are attempts to describe God. They are, again, broadly speaking, talking about God in the abstract.
Put another way, it's clear that what we see in the Chalcedonian definition is a manner of speaking that is, in the words of Justo Gonzalez, far different from that of the Gospels, and has been deeply influenced by extra-biblical patterns of thought.
Gonzalez and others recognized that given the controversies the Council of Chalcedon was addressing, and the specific heretical attempts by Nestorius, Eutychius, and others to answer questions Scripture does not reveal, it's not at all surprising that the language used to attempt to resolve those controversies is also not found in Scripture.
We'll talk about Luther's analysis of the Council of Chalcedon in another episode. For now, though, we want you to be aware that just as we've seen in the early church heresies and controversies, all attempts to explain the person and work of Christ in a logical, philosophical manner, in other words, all attempts to claim to see the hidden God, fall far short of the confession of faith Jesus was looking for when he asked Peter, "Who do you say that I am?"